Mark Zaskey. Let the madness begin. A new knowledge for a new world. All right, guys. Right off the bat, if you've been listening to the show, then you know I have a deep down disdain for mainstream science and the way they've participated in the suppression of information regarding the existence of our neighbors out in the forests and mountains. In fact, I just plain hate anyone who claims a scholarly title and has the audacity to dismiss credible eyewitnesses or physical evidence without investigation. And all of you should as well. And if you don't, at some point, if you keep listening to this show, you're gonna. None of what's going on with the DNA study right now is surprising to me. However, what is surprising is, and some of it isn't, but some of it definitely is, some of this new stuff, is our own community's reaction to it. People still don't get the simplest facts of the study. Melba Ketchum's lab and all the other labs confirm these findings. That's a fact, okay? Now, the other glaring fact is that for reasons unknown, everyone seems to have missed this. The NAS journals here in the States never looked at it. It was never given a public, transparent, fair peer review. Now, that's called suppression of scientific discovery, period. You can look at it any way you want, but the fact of the matter is, we don't know about it as valid science because those that are in charge or the authorities on what is valid science refuse to even look at it. It's that plain and simple. That's the definition of suppression of discovery. Instead of demanding that it be given a fair review, like some PhD's snail research, it's laughed off. 5 years of work, including several labs, all this work, and, you know, it sounds very familiar, like every other damn discovery that, you know, could have changed the course of humanity. And, you know, so what I did was I've been watching a few people in the community, and I tracked down yet another guest, and I'm going to bring some more credible information to you people tonight. And definitely some more information on what's really going on with our academic monarchy out there. And about a month ago, I found a page on Facebook that piqued my interest. And after considerable effort, I actually tracked down the owner. Tonight, we're looking at an organization doing some very bold work, both in ancient American treasure hunting and the Bigfoot research community in New Mexico. That's right, New Mexico. And they have some excellent research to back it up, including, I believe, possibly having contributed to the actual Ketchum study itself. Now, this gentleman's team is one of the most scientifically minded and critical teams, I think, that's out there. He also has an excellent YouTube channel. The evidence that you can view on that channel is awesome. And as I said, his Facebook page that he and his team maintain called KGRA-db Research New Mexico Bigfoot. Now, our guest tonight is Robert Kryder of Kryder Exploration. Robert, are you there?
I'm here, Mark.
I'm doing good, man. How are you tonight?
Getting so good so far, anyway.
Okay, man, okay. How's the weather out there? Where are you at, first of all?
We're south of Santa Fe, about 20 miles. We're at about 6,000-foot elevation. Water tonight, it's about 20 degrees outside and slight 10-mile-an-hour breeze.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm here in Boca. It's hot, muggy, and there are mosquitoes outside that you couldn't stand for 3 or 4 minutes.
You know, Mark, I'm jealous. It's always like, you know, always greener on the other side of the fence, so.
Yeah, it is, man. It is. I actually really missed that cold weather. We had a really mild winter here in South Florida. So, but let me ask you a question, because I got the feeling last night when I actually finally got in contact with you that you were going to have to make a special trip from the field to actually do this show. Is that correct?
Well, not so much out in the field as far as being very removed from you'd say, civilization. We've got a ranch up on the base of the Ortiz Mountain location, It's situated between two of the main study sites that we're operating right now. And it's a little remote. We don't really have any dependable internet service or phone reception. And so to, just go ahead and make sure this all went through, we had to make a second choice. And, I know you speak about suppression and efforts and things, and I'm not too much in the conspiracy thing other than the point that it does enter into the realm of our studies quite frequently because we kind of work on the back door. But we had some interference today, actually, that led us to seek another phone location.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, I left the house for the ranch for about an hour this morning, and when we returned, power had mysteriously been disconnected from the building. And we contacted the electrical deal and offered payment and everything else. And when it all turned around, they told the bill holder, the account holder, that his information was no good, that they were running identity checks on him, that his information wouldn't pan out, that the account itself was fictitious. And we spent about 7 hours today trying to get that rectified until about half an hour after it was too late for them to turn the power back on today. And at the end, some of that was nothing changed. There was basically no other new information put in. They just took 7 hours to, rectify a problem that never should have been there.
So it was just kind of gave you the feeling of like a little harassment going on or something there, huh?
Well, I just thought the synchronicity was a little unusual, just to suddenly lose power the same day that we're going to do the first presentation of a lot of the information and our opinions. And, this has never happened before. I've had utilities for 25 years. I've never even experienced anything close to what went on today. So.
Welcome to crypto reality, buddy.
Right.
All right. Well, look, I was going over some of the information that you had online today, and I happened, and also in an email that you sent me a couple of days ago. And one of the things that piqued my curiosity was that you're not just a Bigfoot researcher, and then I started to watch some of the information on your YouTube channel, and what I saw was that you actually were not a believer in the beginning. Is that correct?
Well, being, raised the way I was always exposed to very odd things, enigmatic studies. The wonders were always pushed as a child by a lot of people around me, my mother and some of the family. But as far as the Bigfoot enigma goes per se, no, it was not, that part of the family doesn't really believe in anything like that, even though they'll tell you some pretty wild stories. They perpetuate that's exactly what it is. It's myth and story. And I think probably the first thing is, well, I have to say this. When I was about 6 years old, I watched the series In Search Of, and I was absolutely blown away. And when they did the stuff on Bigfoot, and then we had some of the early docs come out back then, as a kid, it just seemed to be validity in my heart and in my soul, truth, that they were touching on, but for some reason was nowhere else to be seen. And as I grew up and went to school and different things like this, a little more information came out here and there, and so it wasn't necessarily that I didn't believe, but I didn't have enough to believe. And of course, all the input and influence around me at that time was, hey, that thing should be riding a unicorn.
Right. Well, in that one video, it was, I believe, shot in 1995 was what I was watching. You had actually said that you were on some type of a field investigation for, I think it was some gold left somewhere or something like that, and that's when you guys actually caught it on film the first time. Is that correct?
Yeah. Matter of fact, we were accessing an area that was kind of gray. Not black or white, whether we should be in there or not. It was based on some satellite recon stuff that I was working some backdoor gut projects. They gave me a target, said to be a stack of gold and silver coins. The estimate is probably loot and robbery. It was 3 or 4 feet down in a very, very remote part of the Badlands in New Mexico. And so no one is in this country. No one travels on it. No one hikes it. Even the landowner's family, they're not allowed to go out on it whatsoever unless they're doing cattle. And so our access was a little tedious. So we were actually jogging into this area to do fast recon and to see if the target was on their property or not. And that's when we came across it. We were running through a bunch of mesquite groves with some cedars in it, And the guy that was with me was in training on our team for doing the type of work we were doing at that point. And he was a local guy from about 20 miles away there, born and raised all his life. And he's actually the one that looked up and yelled, "Bigfoot." And, of course, which stopped us in our tracks. Instead of, looking, I went to turn the camera on. I recognized the fact that everybody always looks and doesn't turn the camera on. So I immediately did that and began to pan around, and I thought he was 10 feet from him. I didn't know the way he was yelling. And then he pointed up there on the ridge, and when I zoomed into it, it like to blew me away. Now, when I say that we didn't believe what we saw, he even made the comment, "What if that is a Bigfoot?" And I told him, "Well, John, we're not hunting Bigfoot today. We're hunting treasure. We got to go." We had so much time to get in and to get out. And so we shot like a minute and a half of this thing, and then we bolted. And when we came back by, of course, it wasn't there. It was quite a bit darker. We could still see the skyline at that point. And it got a little nerve-wracking then because, the way we appeased ourselves to leave this thing was to say, "Look, maybe it's a cedar tree. We got to go." And when we went out that evening and it wasn't on the skyline, of course, then that got us going a little. And it wasn't until, I think about a week later, we were reviewing the footage with the son of the landowner, who's a pretty good guy. And when we went in and really looked at that, even if that's small of an object in the frame, we really began to question because we started to see traits that shouldn't have been there. And the light absorption is that's one of the things that always gets me, the ability to absorb light. So they look very black in a lot of conditions, and they're not. It's just that you don't have a high refraction. And that really bugged me because not to go on and on, at that time I was doing a lot of computer enhancement work for a company called FFP. That was a fuel company, and they had truck stops, and people were doing these drive-thrus and summarizing stealing fuel. And what I was doing was enhancing images of people in the driver's seat, people in the sleeper, words, letters off doors, quarter of a mile away, doing these enhancements, and these things were going for prosecutions. So,
Right.
So in 95, I said, the guy that operated the local truck stop that I worked with a lot, his name's Fred, he's a great man. He said, "Well, why don't you just bring that video and throw it in the workstation?" And so we did. And at the time we were using what was Snappy. It was the first month it was released. That was some old CIA fuzzy logic, digital enhancement software stuff. And we used that to sample the images and throw it through. And then we used standard Corel filtering techniques. So, and the images that came out, it put me in my seat. I couldn't believe it. I mean, you're looking at space and it just absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, I got it. I checked out the enhancements, and it's interesting that you bring up the absorption of light. That seems to, that's if you think about it, really that's the primary reason that detail in so many pictures. That's probably why we have coined the term blob squatch. I mean, in the end of the day, you get that in almost every situation. I know I've experienced that in my own research and in photos that I've taken. And it can be frustrating, but in the end of the day, that's pretty much your motivation for kind of taking a turn in the research, or was there another situation that helped you put together this team that you have, and that you guys have been doing this research you've been doing?
Well, we've done a lot of high-end exploration, subterranean excavations. We've opened Spanish mines and things like that, all the way back to the late 80s. Of course, different groups of people, different individuals come and go intimately with the team that you work with like that. So when we had that result and saw that animal, we realized there was at least another, let's say, facet to the area we were then working, and which is extremely controversial. It's a big find. We've been raided by the government and National Guard helicopters there and the whole nine. We can get into that. But needless to say, as we worked the site over 8 years, I got to know that particular animal rather well. So the question, even after the enhancement and seeing what we saw, it was very little question to what it could have been. The landowner's son returned to the location. We estimated the height between 11 and 12 feet because he could barely see where the navel is on that creature over that hill. But needless to say, so the other facet of this became, not only were we in an ancient site that was built 10, 15,000 years ago. It has advanced traits of geometry and a few other things. But now we have this 12-foot animal that's walking around in here. Why are these things like this? Why are they in the same place? What is there a connection? And I later learned that there probably isn't necessarily a direct connection between the Bigfoot phenomenon and the sanctity or how special that place is. More or less, it's a very ancient locale. It's always been abandoned. You know, most of the places are very remote. You can't get into anywhere. And that lends to both the reasons that both of those things are there. It's a great place to hide great things of treasure or history, and as well as a great thing to hide a cryptid. I stayed down there working for about 8 years, on and off. And at one point, about a year after we shot that video, I began and stayed there for 8 months solid, never left, and I stayed in a tent. My team came and went, usually on a daily basis, sometimes not for a couple of days. And during that time, of course, I had visits every single night for those 8 months. And one by one, of course, my team was getting the stories. And, you know, most of them looking at me like, come on, guy. You know, we got these guys are ex-military, old oil field guys. You know, you can't scare them. You can't deter them as well. You know, they just believe about everything you say full. And so telling them that, you know, I got this giant thing walking around my tent at night, you don't even want to say it because they're just thinking you're hearing noises and you're a wuss. So one by one, though, over the period of a couple of years after that, each one of them had their own run-in with the same animal. So over the years, needless to say, there was no question what we had videoed. You know, it ended up with sightings as close as 5 to 10 feet, full view, full moon, no obstruction, 30 feet. Numerous amount of times standing in the trail in front of us and step to the side so we could pass, and he wouldn't walk anywhere. He would stand there. And it's like...
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, so just real quick, just for the people out there, did you ever get a good look at its facial features?
By moonlight, yeah. And it's just like what the video shows, except when... I'll give you this, too. You know, we look at these things and we say, oh, their head's all mashed down into their shoulders, and they have these little bitty head on their body. And it's true to an extent. It really is. And when they are alert or decide to stand up and leave, I mean, he looks like a big basketball player. I mean, this one is real heavy, and I got to say that he's got a gut. He's got a huge chest. He's big. He's really big. But when he goes fully erect and decides to run, I mean, the head no longer, it's not hunched down into the shoulders. There's an obvious portion to the neck. It's just that the traps, the muscles up there, connect so high to the skull, and they're so large. So the head shape, to me, and I've been close to him a lot of times, and I didn't notice this large gorilla-like head on top of this thing. What we looked at, even in the facial features, was, you know, I'm going to swing to the side of human, and that's what I've experienced.
Now, when you say human, are you talking about like a pre-human more? Like, did you happen to see that tent video? It came out a few months ago, the Dyer tent video.
Yeah, literally like the epitome of a caveman.
Yeah, I mean, was that similarity in there? Was there a similarity between the guy you're seeing and the guy that was filming that video?
A little bit. You know, what I've been around was not so exaggerated in the form. You know, if that creature was to walk up to you, if you shaved it and it walked up to you, it would look extremely foreign. It would look alien to you. With what I've seen, there's a familiarity to it. There's a recognizable familiarity to it. It's familiar in a human way. I don't know how else to explain that.
That's interesting, man. That is interesting. So you had several encounters at close range, and this guy actually just stood there and let you pass.
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, we don't use any lights generally in the field whatsoever, no matter how dark it gets, terrain, whatever. So you
now, let me ask you this. Was he aware that you were aware that he was there? I mean, could you sense that the two, you know, you're in a group and he's on the side of this trail. How far off the trail?
Well, you take one step or maybe a second planting step. So take one big step and then set your second foot down.
That is absolutely incredible, man. I think that's
when the first time that happened, and I remember there was 4 or 5 of us coming out, and we could see through a grove of trees, And I don't know how many people out there hike with no lights on or have really done that. In the moonlight, we all have probably seen this. And that you can make out the trail shape in front of you. And you can do that even on a dark, moonless night. You can see the contrast difference in the trees and things, and you can see where the trail is. And what it was the first time was I was leading out, and I was walking, looking forward, and instead of the lighter area or patch that I followed toward, it was just all evenly black. And I thought, what in the world? I cannot see anything in here. And then just maybe 25 feet ahead of us, maybe 30, the whole black central mass of blocking black stepped sideways in 2 steps. And it took away and revealed the trail set in front of us. And everybody in that line that was aware of what just occurred, which is like the next 2 people behind me, stopped, planted, didn't want to move, didn't know what to do. And, you know, you have to have a logical... I had been around the animal a lot at that point, and I had already beat my own fear down a dozen times as I needed to during the night. You're trying to sleep. You know it's there, you know. And so the logic is the only way to do that. It really does work. So the moment you have to think, okay, here's the 2 things. It's here, and if it wanted to do something, it absolutely could. And it could leave as well. So there's a type of an interaction there automatically by default. So that's what we would step into. You know, we got to walk out of here anyway. I mean, what are we going to turn around and go sit back by the river overnight, or, you know? So there we go.
So that's definitely a pulse pounder, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, really bad. And then I'm in a unique position as well, though. See, I've got to be a project manager and a lead man over a group of people that are pretty serious, and they're kind of like running around a bunch of half-drunk wolves. So I can't really bend, even if I want to.
Yeah.
So I can't react, and I can't be scared, because everybody's going to base their next feeling or reaction off what I do.
Right, right.
And so I gained a lot of strength in that over the years with people as well. So that gave me probably a little bit of an edge to push through, you know, to a logical position, because I had to be that person.
Right, right. Now, when we first started the show just now, you had mentioned something about this being the first time for you to go ahead and start to unload apparently a pretty good caseload of what's going on. So what I want to do is I want to just give you an open forum, and I want you to just go ahead and go on and get out what it is that you want, you know, the public to know about what you've been doing, what's going on. If you have any comments that you'd like to make about anything that you've contributed, you know, to the study, it's my understanding that you did contribute to that. What we're going to do is we're going to take a real short break. When we come back from the break, we're going to begin to let you pour through all of that stuff, all right?
Hey, sounds good, Mark.
All right, man. We'll be right back. Stick around. Robert Kryder, more crypto reality coming right back. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto Reality. I'm your host, Mark Zaskey. Tonight we're with Robert Kryder of Kryder Exploration. Rob, we were talking with you just before the break there about a transitioning phase where, you know, you're moving from what you were doing into the future. And then I know, you know, I want to give you guys some time here. I want you to, you know, tell everybody what's going on, what's been going on as far as the evolution of your research.
Well, I'll just back up a little bit, I guess. I got into looking at what you call Jesuit codes, all types of cryptid epigraphy, different petroglyphs and symbols on rocks that mean different things back in about 1989. And that opened the world of enigmas for us. And we started doing Spanish treasure and started doing professional geologic touring and in the Arizona desert, because no one else, of course, would guide and a lot of the rough stuff. That gave us access to some of these larger stories and things, because we started to find a lot of the sites that history had lost. That pushed up now, like I said, to this major site that we were working, where we encountered the Bigfoot that we called Harry for so many years. And as we went through a lot of that side, I began to also realize, of course, you know, the way the game is played and who the players are in the game. And it happened because of the things I had found. And over the years of decoding glyphs and stone monuments and unraveling history and things. I approached it from the site backwards. I started to find the sites and then needed to know whose they were instead of saying, oh, well, I've got this culture or that culture, and I'm going to go look for their site. So I was fortunate enough to be exposed to the weird points and some of the stuff that seemed a little more divine intervention or whatnot on the way up. So by the time it got down to the detailed science, I had a different perspective probably to look forward and see a lot of this. Now, of course, dealing with the levels that we did because of the site that we had found where we did film that Bigfoot and stuff, that location, that area, there are 7 giant geometric chambers there. And when we found those chambers, of course, we were immediately approached with a backer, and that backer ended up being backdoor, full backdoor. And the man who was actually dealing with us directly held office in the World Bank. They funded my first $58,000 on that project, trying to enter a room that was 200 by 200 foot. So we're talking almost 4 football fields inside one room, a big geometric-shaped chamber, one of 7. When they began to be my support group, I should say, inadvertently, I was exposed to things like the satellite technology of the day. I was exposed to secrets that they knew every day that we would just, humanity would flip at any one of them. And these are common. These are nothing to them. And by them, I don't mean, the secret group of elite or any of the front names that we normally hear. I mean, we've all heard the same names, the temples and this and that and the eye and all. And I'll just tell you those are all fronts. Everything you hear is a front, or you wouldn't hear it. The technology, even in 1994, let's say to look in the ground, well, they told me how many people I had working in my tunnels. They told me what side of my tunnels we sit and ate lunch on. When I would change up part of an operation and not make them aware, they would call me and ask me why I did it. And this would be even maybe just pecking a 2-foot hole in the side of a hill. And I got to meet the man who was actually doing a lot of the looking, and I think he's probably passed on now. His name was Ray, and they called him the painter. And what he told me blatantly, he said, we were talking about a room at 1,700-foot depth. That may seem extreme, but it's not. And talking about that room, I was questioning Ray. I said, what can you see, Ray? I mean, you keep giving us information, but I really don't know what your limits are. And he said, well, if you had a lighter down in that room, a regular old butane lighter, he said, I could not only tell you how much fluid was in it, I could tell you the chemical composition of that fluid and any tags that were in that fluid for what factory it came out of. And I said, at 1,700 feet, Ray. And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Wow. Up to 64 different technologies used in 3D, comparative analysis, with 3-dimensional visual graphical display. So in other words, it's basically technological astro traveling is what these guys could do in 1994. Right down to materials analytics. So they can give you a materials analysis of what's inside of a chamber. And basic items, description, they can inventory an underground room 1,000 feet deep without ever going in it.
Wow. Well, let me ask you a question now. What you said was, and it was kind of a quick jump right into these were the people that were backing me. How does somebody go from trespassing on properties and for personal gain or an interest, so to speak, to coming into a working relationship with the major players on this planet?
Well, there was kind of a bridge gap activity going on at that point. Matter of fact, the first information that I ever gained from them is what I was following up on when I ran into that critter, which brings us slightly to another edge. Sometimes I don't know how much I want to put my feet in the mud until others have a basis in which to weigh some of that information. But I'll tell you this, that as far as government involvement goes, and as far as backdoor involvement goes, especially in remote regions, Bigfoot watching you and the government knowing what you're doing is not always as disconnected as you might think.
Oh, man. I like this guy, Race. Okay. All right. So then why don't you go ahead and continue, Robert, with where you left off?
Well, where I was going was the technological ability that they had in 1994. And just basically all it does is say this. I mean, we use this technology. We dug by it. Our lives depended on it. When I say that, it means that when they tell you that they can't find ordnance and they can't find any chemical compound, biologic compound, whatever you can think of, when they tell you they cannot find that anywhere in this world, they're not being truthful with you. When they can justify huge actions to enter other countries to look for something, no, I'm sorry, that's not being truthful. Not to look for it. Maybe to go get it, maybe to uncover it, maybe to reveal it. But there, as far as it goes, in that square mile, I got to see a document one time taken off a desk, and I'll just simply go ahead and blow some doors out here. And it was from an internal military security FBI called Gaddis team. The reason I'll go ahead and say it is because, by golly, that was on my site, and my name was on that document. So I feel, and I ended up in my hands, so I feel every right to discuss it. On that, probably the most interesting thing was inventory number. They were talking about specific items. They mentioned item 16 and other items, but they did it out of over 16,000 items in that square mile that they already had data logged. Everyone already had a number. Now, these are things we're finding that no one else in the world's ever supposedly found with any form of technology, and they already had them numbered. So what that tells me is, and like I later learned, the systems are automated that find the anomalies. The anomalies have to still be looked at by a human being to be described or evaluated.
Yeah, so in a sense, they knew everything, and then they needed a shovel.
Yeah, I mean, really, you got to have a guy look at that little pinpoint on the landmass. There are so many pinpoints on the landmass that are anomalous. It's an absolutely immense job. It's not for a computer to tag them. And most of them go untouched until one or another flag shows up. So, for instance, one of the things we used to do is take a radar scattering net, throw it over a known target. Wait 2 or 3 hours, and here comes a helicopter.
So you would trigger it, and that would actually bring them.
Yeah, all you got to do is cover it up. Absolutely. Or scatter the signal pattern to where it makes a difference, makes a change.
So they get curious, come out, and see what's going on.
Yeah, and that's one of the ways we actually we would validate information that way. So when we gained information on a target based on backdoor SAT stuff, then a lot of times we would go either make a scene on top of it, take a backhoe, start digging a hole on it, and watch what type of response you get.
Right. So then you would know that this place was already tagged or already had been searched. And now, as far as that goes, once they knew you, were you still doing that? And then was that a way that you would pick up more work or how, another job, so to speak? Or how was it that, what did they do? Approach you about this, or in your ongoing research, they would say, look, we got a place we want you to check out after this, or?
Well, it's not quite as organized as you might think. So it's plausible deniability. Nobody's accountable to anybody. What I actually did to start with, I answered an ad in the back of Lost Treasure magazine. And if you open the old mags from early 90s, late 80s, you'll see an ad in there that says, money available for treasure hunting projects. And it says the Ellis Group. Okay, well, that was the front name for Backdoor Gov to fund private treasure hunters to pull value behind closed doors. They take care of liquidation.
Right.
This is not front door. This isn't even... I tell you the honest truth, I don't know who in the world's paying for it out the back door. I know where the information was coming from. And I know the validity of who the people that I work directly with. But where and who is going to, I don't know, because we've been raided by the front door, and we're a backdoor project. So... Right.
So one hand isn't aware of the other.
No, not even. No.
Or I'm sure they're aware of the other, but they're definitely like trying to play catch up at some point.
Well, what it appeared to me is that the man man that was above us that we were actually getting our funding from was granted a certain amount of money to go and turn that into more money.
Gotcha. So now moving forward, I know you had made a couple comments, and then you sent me that email, which really piqued my interest. And the email you had sent me had something to do with, I believe it was a geometric structure that actually had working technology in it. Now, was the government involved in that find as well?
Vicariously. So one of the members of the team that I brought out there ended up being, backdoor Navy EM and demolition. And that's how, it actually scared him. So he wouldn't return, and that's how we kind of found out who he really was.
Now, is that around this same time frame that we're talking about right now, or is that a recent discovery?
I believe that one would have been in about 2002.
Can you describe that find just briefly?
Yeah, I was actually getting trained on some of the imaging equipment we use, the geophysical phase reader, geomagnetic mapping, and so I wanted a good example. I was bringing one of the developers from Germany to train me on the equipment, and another man who is a EM specialist, and he runs a salvage company there out of Florida. They came out to do the training with me, so I wanted to bring them into something also a little bit extreme, a little over the top. So I selected a location that I had not worked very much before. Let's put it that way. It was pretty new to me. I knew there was stuff there because I had driven around the monumentation. It was on a huge private land holding a 68,000-acre horse ranch. So it was remote enough not to be observed. I thought it was probably a good place to test while I had a developer there what was in these like sites, because I had other sites that showed the same indications on the surface. When we did this, of course, we approached the hill. We pulled our vehicles up on the base of the hill. Immediately we started smelling stuff getting hot. We didn't know what the heck was going on. We backed the vehicles back down the hill a little bit. Went to start them again. At the bottom of the hill, they were dead. We opened up the boxes to everything. All the batteries were dead. So we had to re-outfit. We did that. We didn't approach as close up the hill because he's the EM specialist, and as well the developer said there's a field here. There's a proton field. There's something going on here because it's taking every available electron faster than we can deal with it. So we had to actually monkey around and set equipment up special so that we could enter the field to even do a measurement. When we did the first measurement, and this is funny, you'll like this, Mark. I told these guys that you're going to say, I never saw this before today. And he said, I am, hon, in a German accent. And I said, yeah. And I said, you're probably going to say, and I never said that this many times in my life. And he laughed. Well, by the end of the day, it was exactly that. And one of the first things he said after he hooked his machine up, he yelled at the lady, he says, Don, I have never seen anything like this in my life. I said, that's one. And what he had come back with was a return from a metallic signature that showed both positive polarity and negative polarity in the same space-time. It's not possible. Not only that, the elemental return on the analysis brought back, they can ring and do what's called atomic harmonics or phase harmonics, and they can do basic materials analysis. So these machines do a myriad of things. And when they did that, it came back to be as well a metal that wasn't on the chart. Now, whether or not that's because the state it was in and we couldn't get a good reading, or whether or not that it really is an unknown, we could never be declared at that point. But what we did have was some form of radiation or field that was draining everything of electrons. So we started to test that. Now, we managed to get a magnetometer functioning on the hill, and it read exactly as it should in a stable position, until we took it to the very top of the hill where there's a little stone cube. When we did that and we took a reading there, we picked up a signal or a beacon or an emission in the electromagnetic spectrum of the Earth being fired straight up in a focused beam. And it was pulsing at 1/50,000th of a second in algorithm. And it's mappable. And that is what I think set everybody back. I mean, everybody back. We moved equipment, we pulled off the hill, the whole 9 yards until we could test and see what types of radiation and what it was, which was never finished, by the way.
Well, why was it never finished? Somebody came in?
No, a lot of things broke down in the relationship between the developer and the company for which he worked with. And when that happened, he was in Germany and overseas. And they were really the only ones at that time that I had that were experienced enough to take measurements to an analytical facility to see what the heck was going on. They did tell me that I shouldn't go back on the hill, period. That it's probably detrimental.
Well, now, to the best of your knowledge, I mean, is that just a hill in the middle of somewhere that happens to be emitting an electromagnetic algorithm directly into space, or has that property been seized? Or, I mean, what's going on with the place? Do you know?
The property's still sitting where it's sitting. The owners of the property are international. They live overseas. They've not expressed any will to go forward on doing anything with the property, even though the property management company and the property manager himself tried to push for it. They don't think they were. I did not make them personally aware of the situation as a whole and what was going on. Matter of fact, this is the first time publicly. I think I've given a basic description of the hill and what we did there, but I've never really gone into a whole lot of detail about it.
Wow.
To us, and I'll be honest with you, these things sound pretty off the wall. But believe it or not, they can gain a form of normalcy after a while.
No, well, I mean, that's part of being human, period. It's amazing what you can get used to, Rob, right?
I know, and it in a weird way, it feels like it almost devalues the experience later. But that's when I think you gain the responsibility of, hey, I need to do this out to other people who will have that wonder.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. Now, okay, now carrying forward, where do you want to go with this next? Because I know you've got a ton of information that you want to disseminate here, and I'm okay with taking it slow. I'd like to have you on at least a few more shows so that we can begin to really cover this and give it the respect that it needs. I know your team has been working hard with you on this, and I'm sure that you guys have a bunch of information for the Bigfoot community.
Well, and getting back to the Bigfoot thing, through the years of being in some of the most remote locations there are, some of the most rugged, hidden, horrific canyons you'll ever be in, and naturally that's where people hide things. Also, naturally, that's where these animals, creatures, what have you, everybody's got a term they want to argue about. But these beings, these creatures, this is where they inhabit as well. And a lot of history and a lot of lore, a lot of legend wraps around these spiritual sites or these ancient tech sites or ancient habitation sites and these animals or these creatures as well. And so doing 28 years worth of high-end backdoor recovery work, and you see these things run by. They're on a mountain watching you, whatever, but you're not a big You're not out there chasing that. You have a focus. When you operate at these levels, I'm sorry to say this, I don't know how disciplined people can really appreciate being, but when you're operating at these levels, and if something is 50 feet away from you and staring at you, and you're on a job doing an operation, you're on a job doing an operation. There's no stopping and walking over there and saying, hey, we're Bigfoot researchers now.
Right.
You've got gut back door and a helicopter and everything else that you're parked here in the whole 9 yards. It's not what it's about. And believe it or not, half the guys involved at those levels don't even blink at those type of things.
They're fully aware of it.
Yeah, and they're trained. Even something new. They're like the aircraft pilot that's 30 feet from impact, and he's still talking in a calm, monotone voice.
Right.
And the ground at 600 miles an hour.
Right.
That tends to be the kind of people that end up at those levels in these type of operations. So now, as it's gone down the line, and we've experienced them so much, and personally, my personal experience is how much I've been around them, how many of them I've been around, how they acted, what they, interacted, all these things. And because when I wasn't there mentally with the aptitude, I'm chasing you, I'm hunting you, no, I'm out there doing a job too. I'm out there living in the woods next to them. I believe I was never perceived or seen as anyone that was focused upon them. So I think, again, I had a unique, not only perspective, but opportunity to probably get closer because we shared something in that sense. Now, as it goes, I see all this hoopla, I see the hype. Things are popping out of the woodwork. They're going this direction, that direction. I see two things that concern me and that probably made me come forth and even, accept with your offer, Mark. And that is the Bigfoot reality is one. The other part is how this is being stirred around to turn people away from that reality.
Yeah, buddy.
And, with the arguing, with the name calling, with the backstabbing. And then I'm going to give you a deal here. If these people were standing in the same ring, they wouldn't even open their mouths. People don't do that right. To somebody.
That's right. Most people.
It becomes so convenient to jump on the horn and bash. And what people think is a smear campaign, even a lighthearted smear campaign by someone who maybe shares another opinion, it's not always like that. It's not the talk or the name-calling that really is the smear. The smear becomes when you get tired of hearing it, when we no longer even want to hear the good information because of all the crap. That's when it's begun to work. That's when they build apathy. That's when they build benevolence. That's when they build people that just don't care anymore. And that's what we're seeing today. And I think that's why I think it's so important, because there is such a wonderful reality. It's going to open doors to people's belief systems that they've never experienced before. It's new. In other words, it's something they've never thought about. It's something that will interact with every family on one level or another, whether they ever heard the name Bigfoot, because of the implications. I mean, scientific, religious, corporate, the whole nine yards. I mean, what is California going to do if they take an $80 billion a year hit to the national parks because someone's proven they got a 12-foot monkey man running around?
No, well, I'm with you on that, man. And more, I always, for some reason, my mind always has a tendency to take it down to the personal level, right? And, I see the corporate, the chain of events and how that's, a 2x4 is going to cost, who knows how much. It's $3 here in Florida now, but I can't imagine after that. In the end of the day, I take it down to a personal level, and I think about my consciousness, and I comparatively other people's consciousness. And I've said this on the show, and I'll continue to say it. This species represents another type of human type being on this planet, and that's a tremendous jar or trauma right off the bat. Now,
oh my God,
to the human consciousness, and maybe it won't sink in while they're having conversations. But when they get home and they're sitting by themselves and they have time to disseminate it and start to process it and what it means, it's going to open up people's minds, because if this can be, then what else can be?
Exactly. And, of course, there's the other question. If the powers and the authorities that we trust to be competent, that we trust to know every critter out there like they profess they do, if they haven't told us about it, then what else haven't the people we trust told us as well?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree, 100%.
It's not my fault those questions pull up. It's not yours, see? But yet what we see is researchers and other people being beaten. And I think there's a lot of paranoia about the questions that are raised. I think it raises a lot of fears inside of people as well.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And we're going to go ahead and take that top of the hour break. When we come back, we're going to continue with Robert Kryder in a great interview so far. So stick around, because the best is definitely yet to come. More crypto reality here in a couple of minutes. Hang in there. We'll be right back. Alrighty then. Welcome back to Crypto Reality. We're here with Robert Kryder of Kryder Explorations. We were just having a discussion about the implications of the imminent discovery and validation of Sasquatch, or this other species of human-type being here on planet Earth. Robert, continuing. I know we're all just, we're hanging on it, man. We want to hear it. So go ahead with where you left off.
All right, thanks, Mark. Well, I think what I was getting to with that was was just trying to express how things can be running around out there, and we be unaware of them, that we necessarily can't look to all the normal sources for the truth. With the Bigfoot Enigma, the reason that I brought my team in, I've always been interested my whole life. First screen at me was when I was 14. I didn't really have that belief. I didn't know one way or the other. Of course, when it became real, the team started to have experience. All these things we put together, it's just pretty well evolved into a kind of a natural process to get us where we are to Bigfoot. It's almost, I'm not going to say it's divine or it's destiny, but there certainly has been a lot of odd synchronicities to bring us back to the table on the Bigfoot Enigma itself. I think that this is just as important as any lost archive of information. I think that, of course, the ramifications of humanity we've already talked about a little bit, and bringing the KX team, our experience, our equipment to the table, I think brings in another aspect. It brings in people that have been operating, let's say, behind-the-scene levels, gives them not just an opinion, but it also takes away their fear, in a sense, to walk in there and really start to feel the doors open. Now, we're lucky that we have a lot of data and we have a lot of ability, we have a lot of talent, and that's kind of what I'll bring us back to, too, and clarify one of the points, was when I decided to go ahead and just shift the KX focus because of where we were and what was happening onto the Bigfoot Enigma. We did not get in on the Erickson submission. Matter of fact, curious to us, actually, is we've not normally been approached by these groups. We were not approached by the Erickson group and others, even though that they were aware we existed. We've had in our possession excellent quality samples of scat, of food that has been eaten on, of hair. You might think this is crazy, but we even have tools, stone tools that were manufactured recent by one of those subjects that we studied. And so having these things and not ever being approached was a curious thing to me. And then to sit and to hear, of course, all the supposition and all the arguing, and to think, we don't just have evidence in-house. We don't just have the experience. We don't just have the talent and the technology. We have the ability and the wherewithal to actually go into this and see it through. My team has already seen harder enigmas to fruition. We've seen things people have searched for 3,000 or 4,000 years, tens of thousands of people, and worked them out, solved and located those sites in a matter of months. And it's not because we're better than anybody. It's not because we have access to some secret bill of information. It's because we keep ourselves open to all the information. Our training with what KX is we don't make any determinations. If you ask me a question, I'll either know it or I won't. And we let that stand for what it is on its own merit, which is one of the deals with the Bigfoot. We tend to turn it into everything in the world that we possibly want this mythical piece to be. I want to bring the reality of it. Do you want to meet one? Do you want to experience what they are from somebody's personal experience? Or keep it in the realm of fantasy and fantasism? So when Mnbrt comes up, the first study, which, by the way, it's not, Mnbrt, it's an entire consortium of interested personnel with a great effort toward that. Now, whether or not it went out the window and they were sloppy, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know any of that information. What I do know is what happens to information when it's good and the way it's attacked or the way it's treated when it's good. There's a certain indication. There's a certain validity to her research just for the fact it's being attacked, because they don't generally do that. And when you talk about that it wasn't ever peer-reviewed by any of the American deals, well, it's true, and most people think that it wasn't submitted to them, and that's not true. It was submitted widely across the board. It was definitely rejected. And I want to bring in something for comparison. When they do medical studies to pass a new drug, if you compare what occurs in that scientific process to what just happened, you'll see the example of what I'm talking about suppression and how this news and how these interests come through to push one thing to the side of the other. When doctors evaluate medical drugs, often they're paid for their peer review, and they never see the paper. It happens all the time. It's known across the board hundreds of millions of dollars a year accounted for, people can look, is paid to doctors who never see the study. Also, they only need 2 successes out of an unlimited amount of tries. So let's say that if the same standards were placed on Dr. Ketchum in her study, well, then she could have run 15,000 samples through or anything else and only came up with 2 like matches at any given moment, and it would have passed peer review if you paid a scientist to do it, and them to do it. So in the medical industry and the way things are passed with the FDA and other things, if we put that under the same criteria, Bigfoot's real.
Absolutely, man. But now it's my understanding, after talking with her briefly through messaging and a couple of other people that were involved with the study, that they would never even look at it.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what I told as well.
Yeah. In the end of the day, I think that that's definitely a real valid point.
And I have to clarify, like I said, we did not submit to the Erickson stuff because we weren't approached to, even though we had excellent materials collected by professionals. These are collected by scientists. These aren't collected by Johnny Womack, a researcher. And I have every bit of respect for every single person with the interest when it's doing research. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just mean that the laymen collect, and that's fine, and that can be second-guessed. That can be interpreted as how or contamination or whatever. The things we had in our possession were collected by professionals. They were scientists. These things were collected on professional projects because they happened to have been there. Now,
I see. Okay.
I did, though. Yeah, exactly. It's collateral sample collection, basically. But what I did, though, is when all this stuff started to go, and I thought, okay, we're going to do this. We're just going to go ahead and put our talents and our technology toward this effort and just answer this question. We've answered tougher questions in the past. There's no reason in the world we can't do this. I know there's validity to the subject because I've got personal experience, so I certainly didn't fear it. We went ahead and did every effort to seek out where we could step next with information after the Erickson stuff had come up. And lo and behold, I was made aware of the Sykes project, of the Oxford Louisiana Collateral Hominid project. That grabbed me because that was it, and I knew that was it. I knew that not only were they confident enough to understand the opportunity to get good evidence, that they, in other words, they wouldn't pass it up. They would see who was doing this. That I knew that when it went through, okay, you're not going to second guess them. Nobody is.
Right.
And I'm well aware of this. And it tends to happen kind of like this as well. You'll notice like the largest cave in the world. Okay, well, it's in China, and the guy found it 10 years ago. And then it says, recently discovered by British explorers. Okay, so how do you have an article that says this guy found the world's biggest cave 10 years ago and it was recently discovered? It doesn't say rediscovered.
Right,
What it is, until certain groups of individuals are involved, it is not real. It is not discovered. And it won't be until they get first crack at it.
Yeah, and that's a pattern that's definitely all too familiar with ufologists, you name it. If it's any kind of what is deemed by these individuals to be a fringe science, then, and it's really my opinion, until they can get a handle and a control on how it's going to be disseminated, and it may be a very involved process. It may take decades to come up with that formula. Until they can do that and know that there's going to be a plan that they can have and have it unfold the way they can, the way they need it to, then it's just not going to come out.
Exactly. And I really think that that's why we ended up where we are. I really do. Not just from physically where we end up being or with a team, or, because right down to every single person I've met in the last 30 years. The access, the understanding, what's sitting on our table I've not seen sit anywhere before.
And the funny thing about this whole thing is what we're talking about right now is backed up. Like if you just taking a common sense approach to Ivan Sanderson, just look at the man, who he was, what he did as a naturalist. He collected samples for the Smithsonian museums everywhere. He was essentially one of the first accepted or hired cryptozoologists. I mean, what he did was collect unknown samples and discover unknown species. That's what he did. And he put a file together on this subject, on the subject of Sasquatch. And if that man, who was on the inside, had absolutely zero chance of validation, you know, and that was going back when they were probably a little more receptive to newer discoveries. I mean, that was when they were still pulling stuff out of the jungle going, wow, this is real. We can't believe it, you know? And even back then, I mean, they were like, no, this is not even happening, so don't even bring it, you know? So
right.
you look at that and you come mainstream, you know, it really is no surprise. But I think that often it's those little glaring facts that somehow escape most people's attention that, you know, this is not some brand new thing here. This has been the career suicide of many people in the academic community. And it's, you know, I mean, there's only been a few of them that have come, you know, full circle mainstream and were known, you know, Grover Krantz, Ivan Sanderson, and so on. But this is, you know...
Now, doesn't it beg the question, why? Why that? I mean, there's guys out hunting giant squid. What's the difference? Exactly. They're not blacklisted because they search for giant squid. You see what I mean? Why that? Why is it only extremely specific subject matter is treated this way?
That's a good
Why
question.
can you look for a 5-foot chimp in the jungle and you can't look for a 10-foot hominid in North America? Why? What's the difference? Why? You know, why is one person laughed at and another not? There's more physical evidence to back up what we call Sasquatch or the big orang or whichever is identifiable. There's so much physical evidence. It's unbelievable how much is there and how much can be acquired at any given time. Now, no, is it hard to film a creature that can step 2 steps or 3 steps and be 40 feet from where it was in less than a half of a second without barely making a noise, which isn't magical or mystical. It's because it's 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
You know, science states that the capability of the animal based on a certain size and ratio over the terrain that it's in. It's tough for us to walk up a 2-foot step or a rock, but to an animal that size, it's nothing. To equate these things within this, to see one, it blows me away if we'd ever get the chance. It's a lot like the 5 elephants we just heard about that were said to be, they're gone. They're not in this park anymore, haven't been seen in 10 years, they're history. And then someone starts finding dung piles. Well, they still haven't seen the 5 elephants, but they have agreed from the dung that they're still there. Now,
well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
You know, they're elephants, you know. It's not in that big of an area. So it's to say that an animal like this can't be sitting there under our nose and to try to deny its existence because we haven't been lucky enough to get high quality or what they would deem high quality sustained movement footage. There's no reason in the world scientifically to disregard tons, literally thousands and thousands of pounds of evidence.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, why? Why would they do that to this single subject?
Well, you know, I mean, really, too. I mean, let's compare it to the mountain gorilla. I mean, that's the obvious comparison to me. And we've got just in one database that may or may not be, you know, considered the best, you know, record of eyewitness counts, but we've got 30,000 plus sightings in one database in the United States alone. And the mountain gorilla, they spent all kinds of money on a couple of sightings, on the premise of a couple of sightings, and we're dealing with credible witnesses here, man, you know.
Yeah, and they don't really often tell you the details that most of the expeditions to go find the mountain gorillas come up with nothing, even with guides that know where and keep track of the group, even when they keep track of them. And this is on one side of one mountain, mind you.
I know.
We're not talking an animal that commonly travels 40 to 60 miles in a day.
I know. Did you hear this thing where for years now it's been the dying population of mountain gorillas, and then they in another region, you know, they find 100,000 of them, and you know what I mean? It's like people have been saying they've been there for 20 years, but no one wants to listen. You know, now they finally get somebody goes down there and takes a look, and lo and behold, there's 100,000 more of them. You know.
Exactly, and well, and it can tell who goes and takes a look.
That's it. That's it right there, buddy.
You know, I mean, everybody in the world could have gone and seen it, but until the guy said, the right guy walks down there and says, "Hi, I'm the explorer, I'm the discoverer," and which we see common, we see it constantly. You know, my hats are off to some of the cryptid investigation groups out there. It's like, and I come from this in a different position. I mean, like I've stated before, we didn't come in this as cryptid research. We're coming this as there's an enigma. We've seen reality to it and experienced it, so here we are. We start looking at the guys who are looking at for monster squids, like I said before. Well, look at Monster Quest. They succeeded where real worlds failed. And it's cryptid research. But hey, if you're looking for a giant squid, who's going to find it? A researcher that's in the normal natural world, or a cryptid researcher who believes in it, who's going to expect it, who's going to try to predict the situation that a cryptid would be in. So if you're going to look in the top 1,000 foot of water column for a giant squid where the Humboldts are running, well, right, because that's where the Humboldts are running around. Well, no, the cryptid guy says, no, I want to see what's underneath those guys. I think they're just the babies. Yeah. He's a belief, so he's going to go expose himself to the possibility, at least, of finding one of these things.
And more importantly, on a level of where I think that, you know, prevents a lot of these people, is he's going to expose himself to the possibility of failure. And I think that's something that these people are just unwilling to do.
Well, and I don't really blame them. I mean, I work with a lot of scientists, and a lot of them won't even say they know us, and they can't. You know, I've trained a lot of people, and then when they come out of our group or out of our team, they're immediately grabbed by academia, and they're held with respect. They're brought in as peers, not beginners. And I think it's funny because in that is there's a couple of dynamics. There's fear, but there's also respect. So they may fear a lot of things we do because we're so unorthodox, only in the sense that we really don't care who knows about it. I couldn't give a rat's ass. Right. You can't hurt my funding. You know, you can't blacklist me. You can't discredit me, and you can't remove my credentials. It's impossible. Because I didn't meet the criteria, try to stand up to a criteria formed to pressure you. Well, signing an NDA on an archaeological site? What the hell is that?
Right.
When you dig up cart tracks from the 1200s, you can't tell anybody about it. Or what? Are they going to sue you, throw you in jail? Well, probably not. But are you ever going to work in that state again? No.
Yeah.
And I've witnessed this, and that's a direct example of what occurred over here in Santa Fe on a dig. They unearthed cart tracks from the 1200s. They unearthed metal smelters. I was brought in on it, and here I am on the other side of the fence. I'm the dirty guy they talk about all the time, who's not playing in their world, who will just mouth it, who'll say it. Well, they still bring me in to go look at it. So it's like that with the cryptids as well. It's what mainstream doesn't even have an avenue for it at a certain level. They have avenues to suppress it. In other words, when they hit the cart tracks over there, the girl that was digging them drew them, and she was instructed, "What are you doing?" She said, "Don't you dare draw those. That's not a feature." She said, "Dig through it." She said, "Well, it's too late. I already drew it. I've already numbered them." And the next day, she found herself inside the office working, no longer outside whatsoever, and that's all her experience was. And then removed from the dig. And we're talking the metals they were making at this place. This is in the 1200s. We got 32-inch wheel spacing cart tracks. We got advanced metallurgy, creating a metal called silver net. It comes out of Greek mythology. It's an alloy of copper and iron. Matter of fact, the recipe for it was lost for so long that Sir Isaac Newton is the one that picked up source material and eventually, after years and years of experimentation, was the first one to recreate the alloy. Then it was also made again, I can't remember the lab, but here in the late 90s, it was again made in an industrial laboratory. It's the only 2 times the metal's ever been produced.
No.
Yet they were making it in the 1200s. A beautiful purple metal.
Wow.
You know, but this is common history that is common knowledge, not to us. Because who were these Europeans that came over here with the Roman space carts in the 1200s? And then if they were here and they were making metal and had smelters and metallurgy, well, then where's the supportive infrastructure? It means that there was a lot more going on. A simple piece of evidence like that means that there was a lot more going on.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going on, you know, as we've been saying with the Bigfoot thing. and then going into and let's talk about what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and then I want to hear about your team. I know everybody wants to hear about the team and what you guys have been doing. We've got about 30 minutes left when we come back from the break, so I definitely want you to start getting into that. And then, wherever we leave off, just know that we definitely want you to come back soon and cover that. I mean, continue on. So be thinking about that. We're going to come back with more crypto reality right after these messages on the... All right, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto Reality. We're still here with Robert Kryder. Rob, you were, just before the break, going to start to tell us a little bit about your present-day team and what you guys have been up to.
Okay, well, since I'm in this area, I've met a few of the people who lived around this place while we were doing a few projects, and they expressed their interest to get involved, like a lot of people do. Some don't quite make the cut, and some outside vicariously. I've been fortunate enough to have a few new team members come to the table that want to focus our efforts on the Bigfoot enigma. And speaking of which, since where we're located, we're in between a family unit of Bigfoot and a couple of solitary individuals, and also the family occupies a mountain behind us. And I've got some new people I'd like to really bring in. I mean, they've been really, really helpful with me. It's Melissa Thompson and Bob Fenstermaker and Joshua Lawrence. These three people have been instrumental in allowing me to have the time to change focus and been some more supportive in really putting our efforts into something that most people would consider fly-by-night, So I really want to give them the kudos to do that. We've got a diverse team of people from before, naturally, over the last 20 years. Some of them probably would have never imagined that their profession would be ever utilized toward the Bigfoot phenomena, because a lot of them are research scientists and technological developers and things. And so they're not necessarily focused probably as tightly in the inner circle when it comes to these direct studies. But everybody we've ever had basically on the team has agreed that it's a worthwhile endeavor, and they're willing to put forth their efforts into it.
Okay, and then now, as far as what's going on, where you guys are at right now, what's been developing with the new team? What have you guys been up to in the field? And just tell us a little bit about the technology that you've been using to get the evidence that you've been getting.
Sure. Well, we actually, at home base there, we had some visitations of a large hominid, and it was pretty frequent. It turned into banging on the house like you've heard like that. I mean, sound like a horse at the house at 5 miles an hour. Right, and vocalization clicking back to us and stuff. So we actually, since we were forming the new individuals and we were deciding where we were going to go, and we've got a large hominid banging on the house, it was a pretty natural evolution to start to turn the technology into usable forms for this study. So we put our infrared and our thermal equipment, microbolometer thermal equipment, to work, and inside of a couple of other pieces of technology more geared toward the Bigfoot enigma. And we started to really look around, and we started also to ask questions locally and came up with some stories in an area that had never, ever had any type of basic report before. They really didn't know what to equate a lot of this to. And since it's local, and since we've got the gear and equipment, we went ahead and just did some test runs, and one of which was called the Ortiz Mountain Night Recordings, in which we got 3.5 hours of some of the most unbelievable vocals I've ever heard anywhere, absolutely anywhere. And
now that was the 2005 vocals?
Yeah, and no,
that's
these
awesome.
It was actually last May when those were
oh, okay.
Yeah, so 05 was the month. And that's only 10 minutes out of 3.5 hours. We got all types of little vocals between individuals. We've got one that appears to eat something nasty and run away trying, gagging. And we've got one interacting with dogs, yelling at it and clapping his hands at them and all this. So because of where we were, then we really stepped it up. And what we discovered was that there's quite a few individuals here. When we did our Ortiz Mountain expedition, actually found a migratory corridor. We found, lots of evidence of eating and food acquisition a lot of trail manipulation, some constant habitation sign, and then a lot of migratory habitation sign where they come in seasonally feeding. And so
that brings me to a question, because I was watching those videos on that expedition that you posted on YouTube, and you brought up the feeding. What type of that environment? It seems that there are some limitations to what they're feeding on. What's been evidenced in what you guys have found as to what they've been feeding on?
Well, and I'll give you a real quick comparison real quick. In a standardized forest like we've seen, these regrowth forests, there's only 1% of virgin out there, and maybe 3% of what they call natural forest. So in the 97% of the forest we go and occupy today, what we think are beautiful green lush habitats and all this stuff, there's not much food in those in the higher mountains in the mountain forest. In desert regions, 10 to 20 times the amount of edible food. So when you have, what we have is an inversion between high desert, scrub, cedar barrens, up into high mountain and alpine. Food ranges everything from paddle cactus to pinon nut and things like that. People say, well, they couldn't pick that many pine nuts. No, I can collect 15 pounds of pine nuts by myself in a few hours. They're one of the highest protein foods there are, and even one of the Native American names even equates to pine man or pine nut man. Yeah, and that's been one of the consistent things. If you have pinon, if you have the pine nut pine, if you have those forms of trees where they break into cedar barrens, you have food year-round, no matter what. So those areas in the wintertime and in summer as well, and it can provide resources when other places necessarily won't. High mountains or the lower elevation, even swamplands and stuff. Now, one of the unique things we've got is a lot of insect life, so to speak. So in the deserts are full of bugs and insects and everything everybody knows. And like what we noticed, they were going up there on the mountain and eating, and I guess they did like a 2-week stint up there, and they were pulling the grubs. And there was the gypsy moth grubs and the cicadas. And they were rolling rocks 400 or 500 pounds to get to these large grubs. You roll a small rock, there's no large grub under it.
And that's obviously very easily evidenced.
Oh, yeah, totally. And what's great about it is in order to get a grub out of his grub hole for a bear, he has to claw it open. He doesn't have fingers. He can't stick his muzzle in a hole that's a half-inch around. Now, the funny part about a Bigfoot, we'll just move the dirt to the side and peel it away and pull him out. There's never any claw marks, ever. There's never any dig marks. And they're so good at it that I don't remember any big rock that we saw flipped that didn't have grub holes under it. So I could not be that successful. So there's obviously natural indicators there that these things are there as well.
Wow.
One of the other things, like we noticed that they ate, was they popped the side of the pine tree out to get to a woodpecker that would have been inside.
Oh, so they are actually probably feeding on birds as well, then.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the bird, to a nocturnal animal, it's stealthy. It's the easiest food there is, because the bird won't move. You can walk up. I mean, they will if you flush them. They'll flap around, but they usually beat themselves in the trees. They can't see. So you can walk up and just grab a bird. I mean, with the thermal on, it becomes readily obvious to how much food is sitting around you in the trees.
No kidding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and
now, have you guys had an opportunity to witness any feeding?
Not firsthand, no. But food remains, yeah, even with bite imprints, and that was one of the other areas we're working actually is what we call the PLSA site. That is the site that the latest submission to Oxford just actually went out late. It was gathered there, and that site yielded a lot of evidence. It yielded evidence of a female assisting a male in hunting deer. The evidence of the stone used to take the deer out. We believe that the male's older. They hauled yucca fruit from the desert below up under the mountain, and then they were eating that, which left his bite imprint in the yucca fruit, and he's missing most of his teeth, so we believe he's pretty old, and that's why they're using it to form a hunting technique he is. We found food stashes where they were very tight-fitting rock spaces filled with pinon nuts with very tight-fitting rocks placed in the front, where they had actually stashed their food. We found scat, of course. We found hair. We found multitudes of footprints, the handprints we show on the site. But also what was not shown there was an area where they had taken the deer that they had killed, and after stripping it of meat, they had laid the bones on a big flat rock and crushed the bones with another rock that apparently ate through the marrow and stuff. So the processing of the deer is something that we hadn't seen before, that we've been lucky enough to see here recently.
Huh. Well, that's fascinating, man. Let me ask you another question about now in the area. Have you guys begun? Is there any cat and mouse going on that you're aware of, or is it pretty much 10-1 as far as their ability to stay ahead of you? Have you noticed that they've played any games with you? As far as, because I know when I did my expedition here in Florida, there was at least this one day, and it actually, my son had his sighting right here in Myakka State Park. It just stood up and walked right up in front of him and just walked off. But it was about a 45-minute game of, sort of like, I'll move forward and you can hear me, but then when you get to where I'm at, I'll be gone by then, kind of cat and mouse thing. And I know it's a little bit different with the dense jungle down here where we were. But has there been any of that kind of going on, a little play-by-play where they're close and they're close, they know you're there kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, the first night we experienced the hominid that was running around the ranch, that very night he banged on the house real loud is when pretty much got out of denial. I went out there, the horses were watching something, I could hear it leaving, and I went out with no shoes and socks on. I returned with night vision, shoes and socks, and me and Melissa both, and went around outside, and I was doing this click, I was doing like that. And I did that 3-4 times. So the very next night I built my own pea dish out of a wok lid and put a digital recorder in it and put it out on the deck. I shut the door, and I think it's 48 seconds after I shut the door, something out in front of the recorder, out in the trees, went, I clicked. Following night. Absolutely. They're hilarious. I mean, they got nothing else to do. They're brilliant. They love to brag about their stealth in that sense, if you can imagine.
I was just gonna say that it sounds like, I mean, obviously banging on the house. I mean, that's, hey, why don't you come out and let's screw around for a minute,
Well, we were cooking bacon wrapped pollock, and then after that got done, we were making a chocolate cake.
Oh, so he was smelling what was going on.
Yeah, and the previous tenants used to take all their leftovers, and since we live out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a big drop-off behind where the place is, the deck, they used to just throw all their leftovers over the edge and never think twice. And we did this for quite a while. So they may have an ongoing relationship there, and then the new tenants don't even realize it. Yeah, and the older
he was banging on the house saying, "Hey, what's up with my leftovers?" Yeah,
right. And the older tenant was with father, and one night he was trying to get in the barn to get to the oats, I guess, because when we get the molasses and oats, you can smell them. And we got horses here and everything else. So, and he was out there banging on the door trying to get in the barn, and he went out with a pistol and fired a couple rounds over its head. And it left naturally, and it wasn't quite as boisterous, but it didn't stop coming by. Now he's not half as, obviously, as forthcoming as he was. But the other night, I recorded that, whatever it is, whistling to a dog trying to get it out in the dark. There's a little black dog named Eleanor over here, and he was doing, I'll do it for you, it's unbelievable. He did, just like that. Even the cat sound, trying to get that dog to come out of its yard.
And what do you think he was going to do, snatch him up?
You bet. Yeah, this one's been killing dogs left and right. But we recorded the male killing a large dog, and it's the most horrific thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I had an experience like that in Myakka State Park where the first day that I was actually in the park, I was checking out this pond, and about 200 yards away, something absolutely murdered a hog, and it sounded like it was being pulled apart piece by piece. It went on for minutes, and it was frightening.
Let me give you one. This is one that I'll give you this, and this might leave a taste. There was a man here in broad daylight walking with his dog in the cedars on his property. His dog was about 60 feet from him, but he couldn't see him because of the dense brush in the cedar trees, and there's gaps, off place gaps. and something grabbed his dog. It was a large dog, and that dog let out a scream. And that dog, the landowner ran that direction, and whatever it was, ran away with the screaming dog.
Oh, man.
And he tried to follow it, just outran him.
So I wonder if they're eating them.
You know, that's the one I haven't figured it out yet. We went down after we recorded the one killing on the audio. We went down and investigated the area, and we found feet print of mama and a young. And I think he's hyper-protected because of the young, probably.
That could be, yeah. I mean, I know I'm like that way. I'm that way about my son. So, you know, yeah. I mean,
move between the mountain and this river system that's down here, and we're getting more and more homes built in between those two. So, I mean, the mountain is pretty remote and desolate. Nobody's on it. The river bottoms, nobody's. It's great habitat moving between the two. They keep encountering these barkers, basically. The quiet dogs they don't mess with much.
Right.
They want to take the barkers out. I'll give you this too. One of the dogs that was killed in a month period of time, one of the three, was slashed, and there was no apparent blood. It was done 11 o'clock in the daytime, in the driveway of a woman's house while she was home.
Yeah, that's pretty brazen.
Yeah, really brazen. We tend to be pretty careful around what we call the GLSC group for that reason. Because it's not because they're mean animals. It's just because the overreaction when you're being parental and you may be a little overbearing, the overreaction to a perceived threat can be instantaneous and without thought.
Right.
So, you know.
Well, all right, man. This has been an incredible interview so far, and I know I definitely want you to come back and continue. Before we, get to the very end of the show here, I want you to take just a few minutes and let everybody know exactly where they can start to find you and check out your research and start to follow you and give them what you got, because we've got a lot of listeners out there that are really looking for something that's quality, research that's quality. That's hard to come by in this community, and I consider you guys to be a quality research team. So go ahead with where they can find you.
Well, thanks for that compliment, Mark. You can find us. We've got a couple of sites on Facebook. You can also search Google Kryder Exploration. That's K-R-Y-D-E-R. We've got a site called Kryder Exploration LLC, and that's got a lot, very diverse and wide array of the basic research subjects we're involved in. I think that's Facebook. Mark already mentioned we have what's called the CRYPTID-HOMINID Research Group, New Mexico, or NM, Bigfoot. You can probably search and find that. We have another Facebook site called KX Code, or you can always search my name and befriend me and get to our information that way. My name is Robert Kryder, K-R-Y-D-E-R. And we also have a web page that may not be up too much longer, that's got a myriad array, a lot of data in it, a lot of our background and what we've really been involved in. You can see how big the rabbit hole really goes on this. And that is www.Kryder, K-R-Y-D-E-R, Exploration, LLC.multiply.com. And I think about all than that is we're going to be building another full website and really pumping it full of information, about 300 or 400 gigs worth of data. And I believe Melissa just started a research archive on the Bigfoot subject that will be, we needed to put one out there that was respectable, that was above board, and that was a real resource for researchers, and we've begun to formulate that. And I'm going to get that address for you right now, Melissa. And I want you to know that anything that you've got, historical stories or anything else, send them to us, drop us in so we can add them to the archive. If they're competent, they've got any type of documented background, if it was a story written down sometime in the past, we'd definitely like to have access to it to add it to the archive. You're also all more than invited to come, and the data is free. I don't believe there's a membership to get the data. And the site address on that is KGRA-db@bloggersite.com. That should get you there.
All right, brother. I got a question for you, just real quick. Why is an ex-CIA director the present director of archaeology at Texas A&M? Can you answer that for me?
Ancient technology remains that are controversial in nature that dictate a different history. Sites that demonstrate an age in excess of 40,000 years, for the most part.
Yeah, and it definitely is something that everybody who's listening should check out, because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than really most of us believe, or even probably will ever believe. I just want to say one more. Go ahead.
Even playing in the game is hard to believe, Mark.
Yeah, I can understand, man. And just know this, if you're listening to the show tonight, I'm going to describe it the way Robert described it. This is the first layer of the onion. So you're going to come back and visit us soon?
No, absolutely. Hopefully it hasn't taken too many twists and turns here, and we'll make more sense out of this as we go.
Well, absolutely, man. And we're definitely looking forward to you coming back, and we'll start getting into more detail, some more specific stuff on your research that's ongoing, and hopefully some stuff from the past as well. I just want to say one more thing to you, Robert. It's people like you and your team that fuel the truth, bud, okay? And we value what you and your team are doing. It's important to every one of us, man, so keep it up. Because
we're going to do our best, Mark. I want to thank you for the opportunity to give us a platform that we can start to unravel some of this. I really appreciate the interest, and I really appreciate the opportunity and the honest and unbiased point of view you've got. You're a logical guy. I like it.
All right, man. I appreciate that. And with that, that's just about going to do it for us tonight, folks. I want to thank our very special guest tonight, Robert Kryder of Kryder Exploration. And it was an excellent, excellent show tonight, and we'll be hearing from him again soon. Thanks for joining us tonight, and for everybody here at KGRA Radio, thanks for tuning into Crypto Reality again. Don't forget to check out Project White Paper. It airs every Thursday night at 9 p.m., only right here on the KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance. New knowledge for a new world. You've been listening to another broadcast of truth, people. Until next week, I'm your host, Mark Zaskey, saying, always question authority, people. It's your world. Take it back.